When my husband told our pastor I was losing my faith and corrupting our children, I didn't defend myself. Instead, I contacted the church administrator and requested copies of every volunteer log, attendance record, and ministry participation form from the past 5 years. 3 days later, the elders called a family intervention meeting. My husband thought they'd be confronting me. He had no idea I'd already shown them everything. My name is Naomi Fisher. I'm 39 years old, a middle school science teacher in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. My husband, Joel, is 43 and works as an insurance adjuster. We've been married for 14 years and have 3 children. Micah is 12, Leah is 10, and Samuel is 7. For the past decade, our lives have revolved around Cornerstone Fellowship, a tight-knit evangelical church where Joel's parents have been members for 30 years. That Sunday afternoon, I was folding laundry in the bedroom when I heard Joel's voice drift up from the living room. He was on the phone, his tone low and serious. I moved to the top of the stairs, not meaning to eavesdrop, but something in his voice made me pause. "I'm really concerned, Pastor Dennis. Naomi's been different lately. Distant. I think she's questioning things. The kids have noticed too. Micah asked me last week why Mom doesn't sing during worship anymore. I didn't know what to tell him." There was a pause. "No, she hasn't said anything directly, but I can feel it, and I'm worried about what she's teaching the children when I'm not around. They've been asking questions about evolution, about other religions. That's not coming from nowhere." My chest tightened. I stood frozen on the landing, the laundry basket pressed against my ribs. Joel continued, "I think we need help. Maybe a meeting with the elders? I don't want to wait until it's too late. I don't want to lose my family to worldly thinking." He hung up. I heard him sigh heavily, then the sound of the TV clicking on. I walked back to the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed, my mind racing. I sang during worship every Sunday. I'd never questioned my faith to Joel, and the children's questions about evolution came from their school science curriculum, which I'd helped them navigate from a Christian perspective. Why was Joel lying? That evening, after the kids were in bed, I confronted him. "I heard you on the phone with Pastor Dennis today." Joel looked up from his laptop, his expression carefully neutral. "Oh? You told him I was losing my faith, that I'm influencing the kids negatively." He closed the laptop slowly. "Naomi, I'm worried about you. You've been pulling away from the church, from me. I'm just trying to help." "Pulling away? I teach Sunday school every week. I coordinate the women's Bible study. I'm on the hospitality committee." "You do those things, but your heart isn't in it anymore. I can tell." "That's not true." Joel's voice softened, taking on a tone I recognized, the one he used when he wanted to sound reasonable, pastoral. "I'm not attacking you. I'm concerned, and I think talking to the elders might help us both, give us some guidance." "Guidance about what?" "About keeping our family spiritually strong." I stared at him, searching his face for something I recognized, but the man looking back at me felt like a stranger. "Fine," I said finally. "If you want to meet with the elders, we'll meet with the elders." Joel nodded, relieved. "Good, I'll set it up." He opened his laptop again, dismissing me. I went to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water, my hands shaking slightly. Something wasn't right. Joel's concern felt manufactured, rehearsed, and the way he'd framed it to Pastor Dennis, making me sound like a threat to our family's faith, was not just inaccurate, it was strategic. I needed to understand why. The next morning, I called the church office. Rachel, the church administrator, answered on the second ring. "Cornerstone Fellowship, this is Rachel." "Hi, Rachel, it's Naomi Fisher." "Oh, hi, Naomi. How are you?" "I'm well, thank you. I have a kind of unusual request. I'm working on something personal, and I need copies of my volunteer and attendance records from the past 5 years. Is that something you can pull?" There was a brief pause. "Sure, I can do that. We track everything digitally now, so it's easy. Can I ask what it's for?" "Just personal documentation, nothing urgent." "Okay, no problem. I'll have it ready by tomorrow afternoon. You can pick it up or I can email it." "Email would be perfect. Thank you, Rachel." I hung up and sat at the kitchen table, staring out the window at the backyard where Samuel was pushing his toy trucks through the grass. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for, but if Joel was going to paint me as spiritually negligent, I wanted the facts. The email arrived the next day. a 47-page PDF titled Naomi Fisher Service and Attendance Summary 2019-2024. I opened it. The first section was attendance records. Every Sunday service, every Wednesday night prayer meeting, every special event. My name appeared 487 times over 5 years. The only weeks I'd missed were when Samuel had pneumonia 2 years ago and when my mother had surgery last spring. The second section was volunteer logs. Sunday school teacher for the 4th to 6th grade class, 260 hours. Women's Bible study coordinator, 180 hours. Hospitality committee, 95 hours. Youth group chaperone, 40 hours. VBS kitchen coordinator, 30 hours. The list went on. In 5 years, I'd logged 612 volunteer hours. The third section was a ministry involvement summary. I'd served on 4 committees, led 2 women's retreats, coordinated 3 community outreach events, and mentored 2 younger women through the discipleship program. I scrolled to the bottom of the document. There was a comparison feature Rachel must have included, a side-by-side chart showing my involvement versus the church's average. I was in the 95th percentile for attendance, the 92nd percentile for volunteer hours, the 88th percentile for ministry leadership. Then, out of curiosity, I called Rachel again. Rachel, hi. I got the report. Thank you so much. Quick question, is there any way you could pull the same report for Joel, just for comparison? Oh, sure. Give me 1 second. I heard typing. Okay, I'm sending it now. Joel's report was 8 pages. Attendance, 203 times in 5 years. He'd missed entire months. His volunteer hours totaled 14, all from a single mission trip to Appalachia 3 years ago that I'd actually organized. No committee involvement, no ministry leadership, no mentoring. I stared at the screen, a cold realization settling in my chest. Joel had been lying to the church about me to cover for himself. That evening, Joel told me the elders' meeting was scheduled for Thursday night at 7 p.m. He said Pastor Dennis wanted to meet with both of us privately to discuss family spiritual leadership. They're really concerned, Naomi, Joel said, his tone grave. I think this is serious. I'm sure it is. Thursday came. I dressed carefully, modest navy dress, minimal jewelry, my hair pulled back. I looked exactly like what I was, a faithful church member. Joel and I drove to the church in silence. He seemed nervous, drumming his fingers on the steering wheel. We walked into the church office building. Pastor Dennis met us at the door, his expression somber. Joel, Naomi, thank you for coming. The elders are waiting in the conference room. We followed him down the hallway. My heart pounded, but my hands were steady. The conference room had a long table. 6 elders sat on one side, Pastor Dennis, Elder Tom, Elder Greg, Elder Mike, Elder Robert, and Deacon Paul. 2 empty chairs faced them. Joel and I sat down. Pastor Dennis folded his hands on the table. Joel, Naomi, thank you for being willing to meet with us. Joel reached out to me last week expressing some concerns about the spiritual direction of your family. Specifically, he mentioned that Naomi has been pulling away from the church and may be influencing the children in troubling ways. I said nothing. Joel leaned forward. I love my wife, but I'm worried. I see her going through the motions, but there's no joy, no real commitment. And the kids are picking up on it. They're asking questions that make me uncomfortable, questions about things that contradict Scripture. Elder Tom spoke up. Can you give us an example? Last month, Micah asked if people who've never heard of Jesus go to hell. That's not a question he'd ask if he was being taught properly at home. Pastor Dennis nodded slowly. Naomi, how do you respond to that? I met his eyes. Micah asked that question after his social studies class discussed world religions. I told him it was a good question and that we should talk to you about it, Pastor Dennis, because theology like that deserves thoughtful answers. Joel shifted in his seat. But you didn't bring it to me first. You weren't home. You were in Harrisburg for work. Pastor Dennis made a note. Joel, you mentioned Naomi pulling away from church. Can you be more specific? She doesn't engage during worship. She's silent during prayer meetings. I feel like she's just checking boxes. Elder Greg, a soft-spoken man in his 60s, cleared his throat. Naomi, do you feel like you're pulling away? No. Can you elaborate? I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. I asked Rachel for my service records. I thought it might be helpful. I slid copies across the table. The elders opened them, scanning the pages. Pastor Dennis's eyebrows rose. This shows 487 Sunday attendances over 5 years. That's correct. Elder Mike flipped through the pages. 612 volunteer hours. Sunday school, hospitality, women's ministry, youth group. Yes. Elder Robert looked up. You've led 2 women's retreats and coordinated 3 community outreach events. That's accurate. The room fell silent. Pastor Dennis turned to Joel.
Joel, were you aware of Naomi's level of involvement? Joel's face flushed. I mean, I know she's involved, but that's not the point. The point is her heart. Elder Tom leaned back in his chair. With all due respect, Joel, I'm not sure how you can judge someone's heart when the fruit is this evident. It's not about the activities, Joel insisted. It's about her attitude, her spirit. Elder Greg spoke quietly. Joel, I've known Naomi for 10 years. I've watched her serve faithfully, humbly, consistently. I've never once heard her complain or seek recognition. If there's a spiritual problem in your household, I'm not convinced it's coming from her. Joel's jaw tightened. You're taking her side. We're not taking sides, Pastor Dennis said firmly. We're looking at evidence. He pulled out another document. Rachel also provided me with your service records, Joel. I asked her to run them after I received Naomi's. Joel went very still. In 5 years, you've attended 203 services. That's less than half of Naomi's attendance. Your volunteer hours total 14, all from a mission trip that Naomi organized. You're not involved in any committees, any ministries, any discipleship. Pastor Dennis looked at Joel with something close to sadness. You called this meeting because you were concerned about your family's spiritual direction. But based on what I'm seeing, Naomi is the spiritual anchor of your household, not you. Joel stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. You're ganging up on me. Sit down, Joel, Elder Robert said, his tone sharp. Joel sat. Elder Mike spoke. Joel, why did you tell Pastor Dennis that Naomi was losing her faith? Because I thought she was. Based on what? Based on a feeling. A feeling? Yes. Pastor Dennis leaned forward. Joel, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I want an honest answer. Is there something else going on? Something you're not telling us? The room waited. Joel stared at the table. His hands were clenched into fists. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. People at church respect Naomi. They go to her for advice. They ask her to pray for them. And I'm just her husband, the guy who shows up on Sundays when it's convenient. Elder Tom's expression softened. So this was about comparison. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I just wanted, I wanted to feel like the spiritual leader for once, like I mattered. Pastor Dennis exhaled slowly. Joel, tearing down your wife to elevate yourself is not leadership. It's cowardice. Joel flinched. And using the church, using us as a weapon against her is a serious breach of trust. Joel looked at me, his eyes desperate. Naomi, I'm sorry. I didn't think... I cut him off. You didn't think I'd have proof. He opened his mouth, then closed it. I turned to Pastor Dennis. I'd like to request a formal apology from Joel in front of this body, acknowledging that his concerns were unfounded and that he misrepresented me. Pastor Dennis nodded. I think that's appropriate. Joel's voice cracked. Naomi, please, say it, Joel. He swallowed hard. I'm sorry. My concerns about you were unfounded. I misrepresented you to the church. You've been a faithful wife and mother and church member, and I was wrong. The elders watched in silence. I stood. Thank you. I'll be leaving now. Joel can stay and discuss whatever steps the elders think are appropriate. Pastor Dennis stood as well. Naomi, before you go, on behalf of the leadership, I want to thank you for your years of service. You've been a blessing to this congregation, and I'm sorry this happened. I nodded. Thank you, Pastor. I walked out of the conference room, down the hallway, and into the parking lot. The night air was cool, and I stood there for a moment, breathing deeply. My phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. I heard what happened. You're amazing. Coffee tomorrow?
I smiled faintly and replied, "Yes, 10 a.m." I drove home, picked up the kids from my sister's house, and put them to bed. They asked where Dad was. I told them he was at a church meeting and would be home soon. Joel came home around 10 p.m. He went straight to the guest room without saying a word. The next morning, I met Rachel at the coffee shop downtown. She hugged me tightly. "I can't believe Joel did that," she said as we sat down. "Everyone at church is talking about it." "What are they saying?" "That you're a hero, that you handled it with so much grace." I sipped my coffee. "I didn't do it for recognition. I just wanted the truth to matter." Natalie nodded. "It does, and for what it's worth, Pastor Dennis told the congregation last night, after you left, that the elders were addressing a situation involving false accusations. He didn't name Joel, but everyone knew." "How did Joel react?" "He left before Pastor Dennis finished." I stared out the window, watching people walk by.
I don't know if our marriage can survive this. Do you want it to? I didn't answer right away. Finally, I said, I don't know yet. 3 months later, Joel and I started counseling. Not church counseling, professional therapy with a licensed counselor who didn't know either of us. It was Joel's idea, which surprised me. He told me he'd been struggling with inadequacy for years, that watching me succeed at church, at work, at parenting made him feel small, and instead of dealing with it, he'd tried to diminish me. "I thought if I could make you look bad, I'd look better by comparison," he admitted during one session. "I know how messed up that is." "It is messed up," I agreed. The counselor asked if I was willing to rebuild trust. I thought about it for a long time. Then I said, "I don't know, but I'm willing to try." Joel moved back into our bedroom after 4 months. We started going to church together again, though Joel sat in the back now, quieter, less performative. He joined a men's accountability group. He started volunteering in the sound booth. Small steps. One Sunday, after service, a woman named Grace approached me. She was new to the church, mid-30s, recently divorced. "Naomi, I'm Grace. Pastor Dennis suggested I talk to you about the women's Bible study." "Of course, we meet Wednesday nights. I heard you lead it. I also heard you're an incredible teacher." I smiled. "I just show up and try to point people to scripture." Grace hesitated. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Sure." "I heard what happened with your husband last year, the meeting with the elders." I stiffened slightly. "You did. I don't mean to pry, but hearing that story gave me courage. I left my marriage because my ex-husband spent years making me feel small, worthless, and when I heard how you stood up for yourself, with evidence and dignity, it made me realize I didn't have to stay small. I felt something warm spread through my chest. I'm glad you got out." "Me too. And I wanted to thank you. You probably didn't know it, but your story saved me." She walked away before I could respond. I stood there in the church lobby, surrounded by the hum of conversation and the smell of coffee from the welcome table. Joel found me a few minutes later. "You okay?" "Yeah, I'm okay." He squeezed my hand. "Ready to go home?" I looked at him, really looked at him. He wasn't the man who'd tried to tear me down in front of the elders, but he wasn't the man I'd married either. He was somewhere in between, still figuring out who he wanted to be, and I was okay with that. Because I'd figured out who I was. I was Naomi Fisher, teacher, mother, woman of faith, and no one could take that from me, not even my husband. We walked to the car together, our children running ahead, their laughter echoing across the parking lot. The autumn sun filtered through the trees, casting long shadows on the pavement. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. I would never apologize for being strong, and I would never let anyone make me small again.
You've just stepped into her revenge side, where every wound finds its justice, and every silence ends with truth. If her story struck a chord, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive. Another secret waits in the next video. See how her revenge begins.